Yeah.
That's how you want it to
We
be.
can take that tape off,
All right.
obviously it's not empty.
It is June 28th at 5:31 PM. And this is a finance committee meeting. In attendance is myself, Council President Wolf, Councilpersons McNamara, Councilpersons Bruger and Shrimp, as well as Kim Pulley, Mayor Hughes, and Leah Klein. And so, Kim, you have stuff up on the screen. Did you have stuff you wanted to start with, or?
Well, I don't know if you had something specific in mind to talk
So
about, but I assume that
there
the
were-
building is probably going to
Yeah,
be.
there were
Diane, I'm
two-
shocked.
Two questions that we wanted to bring to our finance peoples, and one is opining on the fiscal sanity of the potential purchase of the police vehicle a few months early, right? Is that is that fiscally wise? And then the other is the additional appropriation for this phase of the building process. And then lastly, the building overall. And then if Diane has something additional she wanted to ask, that's always okay.
Okay. I can start with the easy one first.
Yeah, easy ones. Low hanging fruit.
Yes, the cruiser, that is fine because we did budget for it in '22. All we're doing is moving that expense from '22 into '21. As long as we're not purchasing a vehicle in '22, it balances itself out, not a problem.
Yes.
What? Start again,
We budgeted for that new cruiser in '22.
in 22.
Yes, because we budget for one every year. So we're just moving the expense into '21. So as long as we don't buy another one in '22, we've not increased the amount of expenses, we're just moving them all into the same year.
We increased the amount of expenses in 21.
In '21, but our fund balance is healthy enough that it will not cause any impact, and by '22, it'll be exactly where it was going to be.
And in turn, we
Anyway.
would be reducing our
Expenses in
outflows
'22.
in '22, and so it balances.
Oh, we don't know that yet because we haven't done the budget. We haven't done an approved budget for 22 yet.
Sure.
So we don't know
but
what
our
else
pro-
is going to be wanted
But our projection
Right.
has always included this cruiser
for 22.
for '22.
Right.
Right.
Right,
Right.
and
So
our
if we-
projection, if we do it this year, our projection next year will not include a cruiser.
Yes, but very well, there could be something else at the same size as a cruiser that comes up for
Our,
October for next year. I mean, it's not like we're.
But we would have that, if we
We
bought
got
the cruiser in
extra.
January and something came up in October, it would still
Well,
be the
yes,
same
you're
so,
issue.
right, you're
Diane,
right.
let me ask you the question, are you expecting or anticipating or have anything on your mind that we would not have been planning to buy a cruiser in 2022?
Well, no, I don't think it's we're moving money from the general fund, right?
Correct.
Right, to the cruiser.
It's all general fund, we're just paying for it out of the general fund,
So,
Just
I
encumbered.
thought it was in the police budget. Was it
which is in the general
account?
fund.
500, okay. So it's in the police budget though,
Right,
right?
it's the police section of the
That's
general
why
fund.
we're even doing this,
Right,
because we have to
We have to
push that
encumber
money.
the
It's not just, it's in this specific fund for the police, and we're moving this extra money in here. This,
sort of. The police budget is within the general fund.
right,
Almost everything we have is in the general fund.
but we still have to put it in. the police
Right,
budget.
so right now, let me just show you on here, because right now this does not include I don't think, maybe I did. Let me look real quick.
And you thought this was the easy one?
I did, how about that? This does not bode well for the next,
One of these things runs what, like 60 grand, is that what I bought something around there?
67.
67?
by the time you outfit it,
With quite a big cushion.
yeah.
And with a cushion, yeah. Everything that we're doing is with a cushion because again, we don't know if it's,
That's smart, to always have a cushion.
well,
We're either
Sometimes
saving
our
money or
cushions
we're
have to get on.
right.
Okay, so I did move it on here. So at the end of 2022, we're still gonna have $614,000 if we buy the cruiser this year instead of next year. We have $798,000 projected for the end of '21. If we wouldn't have bought the cruiser, we would have had about $850,000 instead. But regardless, we would have had about $614,000 if we bought the cruiser in '22, if we were planning on buying it then.
And so here, let me just make sure that I have this clear conception. In either scenario, buy the Cruiser 2021, buy the Cruiser 2022, all else held the same, that end of 2022 number would be projected the same.
Correct.
At this point in
Yes.
time.
Again, that's
But they-
what all else held equal means.
Yeah, so the fact, I see that since we're on this page, the expenditures and all that, et cetera, that were in the hole though, right? By 201,000
Well,
at this point?
yes, but that will be the third thing we talk about. That's the fiscal
Third.
part of the building. Yeah,
Okay.
because I did build something in to show you what it looked like. I don't remember.
So doesn't the fact that we're in the hole and we just threw ourselves more in the hole, granted, we look like we're in the hole next year as well. And so
And in 23
We're
and in
pulling-
24.
Oh, yeah, that's new, okay. So we're pulling funds, and so I assume our fund balance is going down.
It is going down,
Okay.
but as we've talked about in years past, between 2015 and 2020, that balance went up. And you don't want it to continuously be going up, because at some point people start clamoring, why aren't you spending my tax dollars the way that you should be spending our
I'm
tax dollars?
totally okay with that, I was
So we've
just
been
talking about going in the hole for
This is
the
just
next year.
the top, yeah, that's revenues or expenses in excess of revenues. Our fund balance is not in the hole. The bottom number is the fund balance.
So you're okay with us going into the hole for 20,
Well, the biggest, there's two,
until we get to what point? Until we get to about, what is that,
it continuously stays in the
magic
hole,
number?
but 200,000.
200,000?
200,000 is my magic number.
200,000 is as low as we should go in terms of the
That's- yeah,
fund
that's-
balance.
That's my
spending.
comfort number. The biggest thing that's causing this is the fire contract, which is why I'm gonna continue to push at some point in the future that we should really consider a fire levy, as opposed to paying for it out of the general fund and income taxes. There's lots of benefits to that in the future. I know we don't want to necessarily talk about that this meeting, but being able to get that $175,000 out of there, then we're breaking even. So that is the goal long term.
Can we write something down for the next meeting to specifically talk about the fire levy?
Yeah.
Whether it's this year, next year, whoever.
It definitely does sound
Well,
worth exploring.
I believe,
Help our solvency long term.
I think we should wait.
What
I think
I-
we should wait and see if, we've got.
Right, we got one on there now. What I would recommend myself, this year we have the levy on, next year is the 5 mil levy, and then there's a 2-year break in renewals. I would, at that point, that's when I would go for it. And I know those tend to be a little easier to sell because
It's fire.
Specifically
it's
for
for
safety.
fire.
What year did we say that would be? You said we have a 2-year break,
In 23 and 24.
so we can, if we put it on a presidential year, that'd be higher turnout, so that could work for or against us.
Right. I would
An off-season election would be.
I would do it the first year that we don't have one, because then you have 2 chances. Actually, you have 4 chances, twice in each year. And especially if at some point you can couple that with, pass this fire levy, we can possibly talk about income tax reduction.
And
or
maybe we
credit
don't need to
reduction.
talk about it right now, but that's something maybe in the next 12 months we start looking
Yeah.
at. Okay, that answered my question on that. Does anybody else have any questions about, I mean, I know we have a lot to go over, the cruiser itself. David, I know that, did that answer your question for the cruiser?
Yeah, what it
Okay.
costs, yeah, I don't see a huge financial issue doing this.
Okay, this year versus,
Yeah.
and we still aren't guaranteeing that we're going to have it this year.
Yeah, all things being equal, it doesn't really make much of a difference.
And that could be next year's.
Yes. Okay, so that's that.
Okay.
That's fine by
You
me.
had 2 questions.
Yeah, the next one is, the outlay, right, because don't we have an appropriation for
For the
the
architects.
phase 2 for the architects, and we just want to clear that appropriation.
I thought we passed that.
Did we pass it? I thought we didn't pass it, I thought.
We did pass it.
We passed that
Oh,
one.
did we? Okay, never mind then, sorry.
This is the one this is the one I was leaning
The
towards
other-
not voting for.
Pool on
Was
this,
this
so
car?
we had the money.
Yeah, yeah,
We do have the
No,
money.
no, no,
Yeah.
it was a
Last week.
flag mark in my head, and no, so then it's just, just the continued process of funding the building, that's the last outstanding item for money.
So-
We just had that conversation earlier.
Mayor, do
today.
you want to talk about your conversation with Fifth Third? The emails, or do you want me to just go ahead? what she sent you versus about the direct placements and rates and things. Kathleen?
The third.
No, I don't wanna talk about it. I don't understand anything she said.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think you're better suited for them to understand English from you.
Okay, so when we originally talked about doing this, we were looking at a potential direct placement, which means instead of us issuing a bond out to the public and people buying our government bond, it's basically a direct loan from the bank. The perk of doing that is it's a lot less time, it's a lot less work upfront involved. It probably is a little less costly upfront because you don't have as many of the like legal fees, those types of things. Two downsides. One, the interest rate's higher because it's a private placement. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. It could be because you're at market, so you don't know. But right now the market rate seems to be a little lower than what the direct placement rate was. Second thing is the direct placement, the max they can do is a 20-year amortization. A 20-year amortization of the 1.8 is about $122,600 a year. So that's what I've got built in here to show you the effect of that. So this is
How much?
122,617.
That fire levy sounds better and better to offset that.
Right? So remember, what's the magic number, Diane? So there's the end of 5 years. Ending fund balance. If we did a direct placement.
And can I ask you to look at something just really fast,
Sure.
Marie? What are we projecting the income tax to look like? How much of a what if are we at right now? Do you feel like, I mean, do you think we're still being,
So I've got us pretty flat this year, given pandemic things as we come back from that. And I'm still not positive how it's all gonna play out with,
okay. Do you feel those are pretty okay?
yeah.
Still?
Because we're not showing a whole lot of growth.
Okay.
Just 2 to 3%, which is what most people
Right.
get as an increase.
And that is the actual for 2020?
Yes,
Okay,
yep, that is the actual, which was significantly higher, but we also had more residents.
right.
So,
Well, by the end of 2020, we had the full build out, everybody was moved in.
right, so 2021, we're actually gonna get a little bit because those people that moved in 2020 weren't a full year in 2020. So this is actually, the growth in 21 is just the new.
Right.
This, I've got us flat for 2021,
So that'll be interesting to see where we really are at the end of the year.
right?
Yeah.
And at the end of May, we were at 500,000. And this, once we get June closed out, we'll know where we are, because this June would have been the big month for us because tax day was in May this year.
Right.
So June is when we would have gotten our biggest amount. So once we get that,
Okay.
I'll feel a little better about saying where we'll
Okay.
Where we'll
That
be.
makes sense.
or where I think we could be. So, historically, we've always come in much better because we always overestimate for expenses, underestimate a little bit for revenues, because I never want us to be in a situation where we've been too, I never want us to run out of money, obviously. So we've always come in better than where we project to be. So is that 24,000 really where we would end up in 5 years? No, but it's still not gonna be my happy place.
Yeah.
So we can get a 30-year amortization if we are willing to go to public bid. That does include attorney's fees, which are typically rolled into the bond. What it really is gonna require is probably quite a bit of work from like me and Leah, gathering information for them to create the bond issue documents. But the difference between the direct placement and this is the payment on a 30-year with the estimated 2.3% rate is $90,476. So it's about a $32,000 difference. So just even adding that in, so that's 21, 22, 23, 24. 4 years, 30,000, 120,000, $130,000 difference. So that would already be 150,000 just by going to public bid and having the 30 years as opposed to the direct placement.
How concerned are you going the other way? In all honesty, like if you were 6 council members sitting here, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but like, I mean, you can't see the 5-year future, but if you had a crystal ball, I mean, what would you recommend that we really seriously focus on?
My comfort level is more than 90,000 to
Okay,
do the,
and that's what you originally
That's
said,
where I'm
I
at
just,
as well.
yeah.
It seems like we'll have a lot more wiggle room.
right.
Yeah,
The
stretch
only,
it out
like I
even
said, the
more.
only, you do pay more interest over the life of it because it's a 30-year instead of a 20.
right,
Your interest rate is currently lower, and it would require more legal fees.
so in the long run, I mean, we
So
can
it will
find
cost
out,
more over 30 years,
definitely.
but it's probably the better
Yeah.
option.
It's like all of us, I think I would rather have my house on a 15-year loan, but in all honesty,
I think you
just don't.
I mean, if you, yeah, because this is bonds, it's not an average, so, I mean, right, if you, it's not like you can go, oh, we're really in the chips after 15 years, let's make it, I mean, it's not the case with the bond, right? It has to,
You can refund it if, for some reason, say interest rates drop even lower. I don't picture a world where that's happening, but, you know, I didn't picture a world with a pandemic in it either, so there you go.
Yeah, we did
Um,
2 point.
Right. So, or you can refund it for a shorter time period. But you can only do that once during the life of the
okay,
bond.
it's possible, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would, again, not, I don't know, are we talking maybe $10,000, $20,000 to get the bond deal done?
Well, no, I think it'll be way more than that.
I'm not
I think
sure.
I think it was around 20 the last time we went through this, because we spent that 20 on 2999 Dunn Brand.
Right.
My
But,
recollection was that was about 20 in bond.
like I said, I believe historically, that I don't want to say just, that's rolled into the bond itself.
Yeah.
So it's not an outlay of $20,000.
Oh, I see.
A spend.
Okay.
It's amortized over the life of the,
But you don't have to pay in advance, I mean,
no.
that's,
I think we wound up having to pay it because we never went through the bonds. That's what happened, if I recall correctly.
That sounds correct.
yeah.
And are we talking voted or unvoted bonds?
These are unvoted bonds.
And where are we with our debt limit, our bond limit?
For unvoted, we're about 2.3 million. And this will be
So that
1.8.
basically wipe out our unvoted bonds, so if ever we had to float bonds in the future for need, and what's our total?
Our total is 3.4 maybe.
So what would you expire that, is there anything?
We have nothing right now that's unvoted debt, because anything that's like OPWC, that doesn't count.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that, but it would wipe out our ability to borrow without going to the voters in a bond.
It would, well, depending on the size of the bond.
Well, if we are
If you're looking at,
borrowing 2.2 and our limit's 2.3.
We were looking
1.8.
at 1.8, 2.3, so that leaves
I
5.
was right.
500.
I was telling you the number I think it's gonna come in at, just.
I mean, not to place intent on anyone, but I mean, avoiding running things by the voters, isn't that like, I don't know, that doesn't sit too well with me, and it's,
Well, no, it's not, if you, at least for me, if I feel like we're in a financially sound situation and we're able to do it that way, then, of course, we would have to do 3 readings on voting to do it that way, right? So that would be the time, if you want to get residents' input, that would be the time to do it, but.
we also think if you're doing voted debt, you're voting a levy. Because if you're doing voted debt, you're voting to pay for it. So, which is not what we're asking them to do, which is why it's unvoted.
okay, I guess just something about,
Yeah.
It is tax.
Unvoted.
They would have the right of referendum,
okay, so it still is.
but if you put it on the ballot to vote for it, you're also authorizing that you can increase the taxes to pay for that levy.
It is, if you know you have the money and all that, I mean, it's better to just proceed as if it was a banking transaction rather
Okay.
than to have to go through it's it's messy and it's,
Well, as
Not
long as
as
the, as long
clear.
as the people still have a say in their use of.
Oh, don't worry, they'll have a say, they don't, there is absolutely nothing you need to worry about there. I'm not, and I'm not even trying to be funny, I'm just telling you.
I wasn't assuming any negative intent with that wording, I just wasn't terribly familiar with.
Nope, you asked the perfect question. You haven't gotten to experience that yet, so just saying.
So I will throw out there the institutional recollection that one of the complaints the last time we tried to do a community building was that we were using unvoted debt. That was,
This has happened before.
well, yeah, so was that 6 years ago now already? I feel like it was about 6
That
years.
probably feels like 6 years.
We tried to buy that big office building right by you.
Yeah.
2999 Dublin Randall Road, and it did not end well.
so.
And
so-
I was still living in Lyme at the time, so that would have been completely.
No, I think that it needs to be, this is a big deal and it needs to be communicated ahead of time and
Absolutely.
it needs absolutely. It'll take longer, but if we're shaving some time off by doing it correct with the bank.
And if you get that question from a constituent, why are you not letting me vote on this? Your response to them is, do you want to increase your taxes to pay for it? Because that's what a voted debt is.
Okay.
But at this
So
point,
that, you're gonna have people that, you're gonna find out whether the will of the people
Mhm.
are, that it is, the majority of the will of the people want the new facility, or want to pay for, want their taxpayer money to go for a new facility, and I think that is where we're at, and if there's someone that feels like, they wanna do the referendum thing, then it depends on how many signatures they get and all that, and if enough people feel that strongly that they wanna have it go to the ballot, then it does postpone the building. But
That's their choice, yeah.
It is the way it goes,
Yeah.
and I was, we live next to West Bridge Street, which goes this way and that way, but it's a dead end and it goes over the creek. And years ago, previous mayor wanted to build what he called the bridge right there, to bridge between the Lakewood and Minerva Park. And he wanted, and the idea was just for ambulances and stuff like that. Well, to me, it made absolutely no sense at all. Knowing that especially knowing that the village had never maintained that area. And every time there is a big flood of water that goes through there, there's always tree limbs
It'd
and
be
stuff.
washed out.
In a way, and then they'd have to be removed, and of course they wouldn't. So anyway, we did the referendum, and we got the signatures, and we shut it down. So I think the referendum is really an important thing. So I have to say, I think we need to sell the facility. We need to sell it if we can't sell it, then I guess if the majority of voters don't want it, if we can't sell it, if it's that bad that we can't sell it, then maybe we shouldn't be doing it. That's all I have to say. So I think we
That
need to
makes
just,
sense.
the architect is gonna take, 6-8 months just to do the design work before we can even start on anything. And so we've already committed that money, so that's money down the tubes regardless. If it's either great money or it's money down the tubes, but that's done. So now I think now is where we need to start talking to people about it and just get it out there. And if it's gotta be a referendum, let's get it out there.
And once you have build-ready plans, you have them forever, and
That's
we
right.
can, and of course, there's always the option of just passing the thing as an emergency and taking away the referendum.
So, anyway,
I don't know, I'm just big on making sure that
It's
people
just
get
a-
input as
Mm-hmm.
much as they can.
yeah, no, so it's the biggest, I think it's the biggest amount, except for the building the MI homes. It'll be the biggest amount of money I think the village has spent.
Understandably so, this building is 60 years old, 1950s.
1950s, yeah.
We're getting completely into the weeds here, but yeah.
Yeah. How are we doing on time?
So that was our discussion on, everybody did come to a, were we looking to come to consensus on direct
Or were we just?
placement or
Yeah.
bond? Was that our effort, or were we just socializing this for
I
consensus
think
to come later?
just socializing it at the moment, but kind of keep that, I don't think that decision needs to be that far off.
Okay, yeah, we can maybe come back around to it next month in a finance committee meeting after we've all ruminated and.
Digest it a little bit.
Try to push towards a consensus then. Did anybody else have a finance committee issue that they wanted to bring up at this
Yeah.
time?
I did, of course. There's one of the ordinances, the ordinance right before it that says, in the packet, it says Schedule A.
Yes, the tax budget.
Okay, why, can you explain tax budget?
Yeah, that's what we're having the public hearing on,
So-
6:30.
Okay,
Which is fine, if you have questions, like,
we're just calling it, I mean, it's just titled the tax budget.
yes, this is the one that's required by the county auditor, that only like 6 counties in the state require, and
Right.
Franklin's one of them.
So can you explain what the entries are?
Sure. So the first page, and you should all have a hard copy in front of you. I went ahead and printed them since they were revised. The first page, the Schedule A, is a listing of levies that we currently have. And how the tax budget works is, this is effective January 1, 2022. So the reason you don't see the 3.2 mil on here is because as of right now, that levy is expiring and does not exist in 2022. If it passes, great, I mean, it's there. But right now, we have to operate as if it is not passing, it is expiring. We have the inside millage, the 1 mil, the 37.3. And we have, I missed one. There's one missing. The 4? The 4.0 is missing.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, so that will be 20, let's see, we just passed that last year, right?
Yes.
That passed in 2020. So that'll be 2025, 4 mil. I will have to reprint this front page here for everybody.
120 plus 28, 148, 149.20, 149.2.
Yep. 149.2. Are you a math teacher?
Yep. Fourth grade.
Math teachers you can trust without calculators, accountants not so much. So I need,
I trust you guys as best, your best guesstimate of my facts, though, and
okay, so I will reprint that front page here, in between meetings.
And that's it, and then look, is that the only sheet they look at, or do they look at?
No, they look at all of
the
it.
budget, okay.
The individual.
So they're looking at that too, or what, the new number. And then they're going to look at your your budget for your final fund balance. I mean, what are they looking at on the budget?
So what they're looking for, the county has, the same way we talk about voted debt, there's unvoted and voted millage. The county has 10 mills from every single parcel in the county that it can allocate as it sees fit between whatever government has claim to that property. So the village, the school, the township, whoever. Currently, historically, we get 1 mil of that 10 for any property in our jurisdiction. This is our documentation to the county that we still want that 1 mil,
Okay.
that $37,000.
So they can see that we're not gonna be able to operate the village on that, on this.
You know, they don't, there could be a scenario, it rarely ever happens, but I have heard of it happening. There could be a scenario where if we had, like we had 999,000 at the end of 2020. If we continued not to spend that and just grew it,
Yeah.
at some point they're gonna say, you don't need that 1 mil because you're not using the money that you have. So they're gonna allocate it to the township because we don't need it. So this is just showing that, yeah, we're using our tax dollars, we still want that 1 mil. Don't take it away from us.
Okay.
And it would have to be fairly egregious, like the situation that I know of that happened, it was a pretty egregious
Okay.
situation.
So in terms of the, anything else like the lake project, we're just really tabling that, right? We don't have anything more than, what, less,
There is a little bit for engineering and a little bit of a starter for that in here, like $35,000.
Not enough to do
Not
actually
enough to do it
anything.
in cash, no. But we kind of talked a little bit at the last meeting that we are getting some money from the American Rescue Plan. And we have not received it yet, but that was gonna be about $200,000. So that could get us close to. And I believe there's 4 things that we're allowed to spend it on. One is responding to the needs of the pandemic. 2 is to pay employees who worked during the pandemic, which neither one of those we really have. You can use it as general fund money if you can show, and there's a calculation in the spreadsheet, if you show your revenue loss, which we really didn't have. We actually went up because of the new development. And the 4th thing is to improve water, sewer, and other infrastructure.
Water infrastructure.
Yes.
That looks
So,
like water outside that
infrastructure,
window.
Stormwater infrastructure,
Infrastructure around it.
broadband qualifies under that. So those are the 4 things that we're allowed to spend that money on. So
and you feel pretty comfortable we're going to get that money? Do you?
I
have
don't,
any idea?
I have not heard of anything changing. I had found that number online and I don't know how long it's gonna take to get it.
Yeah, I got an email about it.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that'll take forever. Yeah, I got an email at some point about it. I
Okay.
guess I should probably, who is it coming from? Cause it was right
It
after.
probably is passing through the state or the county.
His name is Joe Biden.
At whitehouse.gov.
Hey, Brian.
And that money comes in, that'll go into a special fund, its own fund, right?
Exactly.
You were one of my favorites this week, because you didn't make me mad this week.
This-
This week.
I just shit all over that.
You just, I mean, you just went to the bottom, the second to the bottom of the list.
Oh, well.
I don't think you can make it to the bottom.
Back home.
Yeah. So the 35,000 that we have appropriated already, plus the 200 and whatever thousand that we stand to get, that might be enough or close to enough
To dredge Happily.
No,
to do the one lake.
other community environment lakes,
Yes,
I'm seeing 155
yes, there's some other things in there too.
for estimated 2021.
Yeah, what else is, let me show you what else is in there. This is smaller, so I can make it bigger if I need to. Okay, so
Is the dam even open?
there's a lot of columns on here, but this is the one I've got highlighted, it's the one to
Yeah.
pay attention to there.
I went by the other day and heard it.
Okay, so I've got 29,000 for
But
engineering,
we've had rain.
but this also includes the tree removal, leaf pickup, aqueducts contract, and then other contractual, which is like the landscaping. If we end up doing anything with goose control, those kinds of
Okay,
things.
and that's why it's more than what you said, because it's all the other stuff that, because I'm just looking at this and you're giving me the, okay.
Right, and then this 35,000.
I figured it was something like that,
Was
that's
the-
good by me.
I like you.
Which one? Is the, what is the?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The supplemental appropriations, that's $1,500 for the general compensation and damages, and I can't remember. That needs to be, oh, wait a minute, we paid, what? May 24th, passed.
So those are the questions
I
I
think that was the fine we owned for the
Is that-
messing up stuff.
Yeah, but that was,
To be clear, for the record, it was not us messing up stuff.
The
Yeah.
stuff that was messed up.
Yes.
this is part of
The
the.
previous
The previous
person.
fiscal officer had left some
How did that get put in the packet?
footprints.
Says-
I had one last one on the finance question.
Hold on.
Should be
That's
fairly
good.
brief.
Okay.
Well, make sure, let it look at it, she asked me if I wanted to see it.
Go ahead.
I'm listening.
Okay, so, one of the questions that was brought up last time we were discussing these, police cruisers, kind of circle back to where we started, I guess. Councilman Benedetti and myself had questions about the cost versus benefit of maintenance costs and savings versus having, more vehicles. I'm not phrasing this very well, but or like, what, do we have available a summarization of the maintenance costs over the last, however many years compared to buying new vehicles?
Yeah, I think-
We do,
So
actually.
I think it was, if I can try to paraphrase you a little bit, I
I
think
did not sleep well
that's
last
okay.
night.
I think he asked
Flip all
us
nights.
to validate the idea that the annual purchase, right? Because like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the village went from purchasing, I think, one every other year to a yearly replacement. And with the idea that it would reduce maintenance costs and it would be a net save for the village.
Well,
And
Perfect.
we evidenced that out.
in 2014, our maintenance expenses on the vehicle were $8,153.
Now mind you, that's with what, 2 or 3 vehicles at the time?
3.
3.
It would have been 3.
In 2020, our maintenance costs were $6,907.
Okay, so you are saving money, about $2,000 a year, it seems like on the scheme, so that's 30 years and it pays for itself.
Oh, that's
The,
not
the
bad.
other side
Well,
of
it
that
pays
coin is
for
that you're buying a car every year
Right,
as
that's-
opposed to, so,
But they're also not in the shop.
they're, right, they're not.
They're not
Yeah.
getting fixed once a
I
week
think
and,
yeah.
So when we had 3 cars and it was every 2,
$2
it was
save
a
is-
6-year rotation.
Yeah,
Now we're doing a 4-year rotation.
right.
And it seems to save
It might be something to look into to keep each one of them 5 years, because it doesn't sound like the maintenance is that much. And then every 10 years, you're buying you're saving $120,000 or $130,000 every 10 years to see if you can get 4 cars to last 5 years instead of 4.
I think one of the things that they don't get fixed properly is when the chief was talking about how the seats break down. And the officers are, have a lot of heavy gear and getting in and out of the car, they like to be, obviously SUV helps a lot, so they're not lifting all that weight off of a bucket seat. But he was describing some of the condition of the cars at one time before we went to 4, and how they were broken. And because of the different size of the officers, you have a
Yeah.
more petite officer, and then you've got the one big officer, and they would be up and down the seat at every shift, and the seat would break down, and I don't think that those ever were maintained, and they never replaced those seats, no one ever discussed. And if we were gonna keep them longer, then I would want them to be replaced if they were not.
Well,
Absolutely.
the other thing with having the additional vehicle is they're not gonna be used as much individually, each vehicle.
Right.
So
I mean, that's-
theoretically,
But I think the takeaway from that is that while we cannot say, well, we can say definitively it has reduced maintenance costs, but that is not the entirety to offset the
Yeah.
purchase price of the additional vehicle.
because there is a year in there where the maintenance costs were extremely high because one of the cruisers was hit in the course of its duty.
But
So,
then-
and then we got reimbursed,
But
but
the rest of that value, in my opinion, can be proved out, through qualitative things that we should look to the police department to express. Things like,
Yeah, we're not
you know,
one
because
city and they're like, yeah.
But I would still stand by, we could maybe try, if we used to do a 6-year rotation with 3 and it didn't work but wasn't good, could we try a 5-year rotation with 4?
it's
Would that stretch it a little bit?
well, and not to bring on, one of the discussions is currently whether or not we keep the 5th car, you guys already know this, and take it out of
the
the
general.
rotation, and that would be used for
The canine.
the K-9, because you have, the way that the car is set up is usable because it is used by 2 officers right now.
Mhm.
I mean, it is usable, we didn't do anything to where the car's not usable. But that would be the thought, and that car actually would not be replaced. It would go as long as we let it go, until it was time to get another one, because you wouldn't want a brand new car and put the K-9 in it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to re-outfit the K-9 car every 2 or 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
every time we got a new car.
You
So
would just-
the actual thought to that would be to extend the life of that particular one, because it's actually in good shape right now. That we would not trade that's the car, we put the K-9 stuff in the oldest unit.
Yeah.
And we did that for that reason in the event that we do decide, and that is a different topic for a different committee, But that was the initial goal that Chief had talked about in the event that we decide to keep
So
picking up.
we'd be at 5, but only planning to replace 4.
We would still be in that rotation, and like you said.
Until that 5th one died, and then maybe.
We would wanna do that, and what year was that?
I'm sorry.
What year was that that we wouldn't wanna replace a car and make it? go to
2022.
2022.
Yeah, I really I like that idea that you have, I really think, I think that'd be worth exploring.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great thing to look at, and especially talk to Chief with it, because the maintenance hasn't been.
It's not all money, obviously, that wasn't what I was getting, I wish Tony were here,
See, the
Well,
the thing is we're just, rather than having this laid out in a spreadsheet, which you could, it takes time and resource to do that. We could have exact amounts and known exact amounts instead of just speculation.
What are we trying to get an exact amount about?
In terms of what maintenance really on these vehicles.
Well, you
And
can't
then-
guarantee
then
if
the
the
thing is-
AC is gonna go out on a car in 2020 or 2026. I mean, maintenance on a car, you can buy a brand new one and it'd be 11.
So, but we're gambling, so we're gonna say, oh, let's get this 5th car, now that will cost the trade-in value of that car, which is, we're saying we're gonna keep it for $6,000, because that's the trade-in value. So it will cost us $6,000 up front to keep that vehicle indefinitely, that'll be the initial cost of it.
Correct.
over the long run, preserving that car and moving to, maybe the 5-year program, I suspect that would save more than $6,000 in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think Tony's point was we're suspecting and we're assuming and we're thinking and we have a gut feeling and you just don't do that with finances usually.
You can only do so much with spreadsheets too, right?
That's my.
Well, let's not
A spreadsheet's not a crystal ball. So what I would recommend is we have the answer to the question, which was,
There are some cost
that
savings.
there are some cost savings, but it doesn't fully offset. We should take that information, give it to Tony, who's the chair of the safety committee, have him start that discussion with the police chief, because it is his department and his people who would bear the brunt of any physical changes in that program.
Right.
And once the police department is opined with the safety committee, then we can come back to the full body and make decisions.
You talk like I try to, if I have enough
You'll
sleep in
get
my
used
life.
to it, no, you'll get used to it when you.
No, I mean, I got like 3 hours of sleep in the last 18 hours. If he talks like I wish I.
Your mind was functioning right now?
Yes, because that was exactly what I'm trying to say.
That's great.
But with that, unless anybody else has something additional for the finance committee.
Diane?
Once, going twice. All right, I am calling this meeting to a close. Thank you, and we'll see you all in 15 minutes. Maybe we're just calling it to order and pass it off to you there, Kim. All right, so do you have the recorders turned on? All right, it is 6:32 on June 28th. This is a public hearing regarding the tax budget for the Village of Minerva Park. And in attendance, we have myself, Council President Wolf, Councilpersons Bruger, Benedetti, Shrimp, and McNamara, as well as Joe Curl. And then we have our fiscal operatives, Leah Klein and Kim Pulley. And without further ado, I will pass it on to you, Kim, to tell us the news.
Great. I'm actually gonna start with a question. Eric, can I ask how familiar you are with this? Because I don't wanna talk something.
Not familiar at all.
Great. Or not, but I don't wanna say things. that
Thanks for
are
the
like-
question, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, there's actually a copy of the tax budget that we're on the table if you'd like one. They're on the back right corner. Actually, just- So the tax budget is a ORC requirement for every municipality, school district, township, everybody has to file this with their county auditor unless their county auditor chooses to waive the requirement. And Franklin County does not choose to waive it. So we do this each year. The purpose of the tax budget is to prove, for lack of a better term, to Franklin County that we still would like them to allocate some of their dollars to us, and to not allocate it to someone else like the township or the school. So page 1, this is a list of the current levies and the amount they generate for the village each year. The inside millage, that's the $37,000 that the county allocates to us. This is what we're trying to convince them that we still need and we still want and still have use for. This is not voted debt or voted millage. The county can allocate that however they want. The bottom two, the 4.0 mill levy and the 5.0 mill levy, those are voted levies. And that's the amount that they generate each year. We currently have a 3.2 mill levy that's going to be on the ballot in November. It's a renewal, it's not a new levy, it's just a continuation of one that already exists. But because it expires currently December 31st, 2021, and this tax budget is as of January 1, 2022, we can't include it on here. If it passes, great, but we have to, for the purposes of this, assume that it doesn't. So this is kind of rough in that you're required to provide 3 years of data and next year. However, only 2 of them are actual information. The 2021 information is still projected, and of course the 2022 information is projected. So if you flip into page 2, the first one is the general fund. This is where most of our money comes into and where most of our money is spent from. So you can kind of see through the 18-19 in total, our revenues have been going up, and in 2021 we have been going down. 2 reasons that the revenue is dropping in 2021. One being that the MI subdivision is finished, so we're not getting the permitting fees and the zoning fees that we were getting from those homes. And also in 2020, if you can see in the miscellaneous item where there's $207,000 that was received, the bulk of that was BWC refunds. They did 3 different refunds during 2020 to quote unquote alleviate their members for pandemic losses. Both private and public contributors to BWC got this money back to them, and we ended up with about $150,000 back from them. So that's the bulk of that money in there, and obviously that's not continuing. Other items of note probably in the revenues is the significant jump between 18 and 21 in our income taxes is obviously the build out of the MI section, where residents typically means more tax dollars. And you can see between 2020 and 2021, that's kind of flat. That's accounting for pandemic related, we didn't lose, but pandemic related funds that we're not receiving. And then they're starting to creep back up again in 2022. I don't think, and then the charges for services is where the zoning fees were, so that's a drop for next year as well. So does anybody have any questions about the revenues in general fund? Okay. Expenditures, they're broken out by department. So security, persons and property, police, fire and EMS, obviously the fire, the salaries has gone away for 21 and 22, but the other is the contracted services for the city of Columbus. So that's the biggest difference there. Public health and welfare, that's the money we support the Board of Health. Our mosquito spraying. Leisure time activities, primarily the pool. And then maintaining our, not park land, but the actual park itself. So it's primarily mulch and maintenance and repairs. Community environment is our planning and zoning commission, or planning and zoning department. And the community environment lakes is not just the lakes, but also things that kind of surround the lakes. So our tree removal is included in there, the aqueduct contract is included in there. Some landscaping is in there. And that is increased this year because we were looking at the possibility of dredging it, so there was some engineering costs that had been allocated in there. Basic utility services, the stormwater, the reason it's gone from having expenses to zero is because stormwater now has its own separate fund, which you'll see in a couple pages. General government is pretty much everything else of the village day-to-day operations. So the mayor's office and department, council, the mayor's court, the finance and lands and buildings. And then some assorted other smaller things, property tax collection fees, our legal counsel, the money we pay to Rita to collect our income taxes. And there has not been significant changes in any of those. Capital outlay, that is the big investments of the village. So in this case, it's the baby pool. And then we don't have any major capital expenses planned for the general fund right now for next year. Debt service, this was kind of projected if we did end up doing the bond issue or debt issue to build the building. When this was created, it was still in discussion, so we went ahead and included it there with an estimate for next year as well. That may or may not come to pass this year. Sale of assets, the $72,000 is the medic vehicle and some medic equipment. And then the transfers in is, as you'll see later, we used to have the fund where we set aside the first $20,000 of EMS every year to buy a new vehicle in 2025. And since we no longer have the EMS, we're going to be transferring that money into the general fund because obviously we have no longer have any for it. For that purpose. So that's the general fund. Do we have any questions there? Okay.
I want to ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. For line under general government, mayor and administrative officer salaries, there's a marked increase for 2021, 2022, is that additional headcount?
It's, we did have our administrative assistant was 50-50 from the mayor's office, and she did some planning and zoning work. She's no longer doing that, so she's 100% now from the mayor's office.
Okay.
That's part of the reason also that the salaries in the community planning and zoning went up.
Thank you.
Exhibit 3 on page 4, there is an exhibit 2. Exhibit 2 is special levies, we don't have any of those, so it's not missing a page, there actually is not one. Exhibit 3 is our debt service funds, which we currently don't have very many of. We just have our, currently active are our 2 water lines. Back in the early 2000s, the water lines were replaced in 4 phases, and they were each funded separately through the OPPC. And we have 2 that 2 have been paid off and 2 are left. And I think they have 2 more years each, so they're pretty close also. So this is, the charges for services is coming from the utility surcharge. Residents pay the city of Columbus, and Columbus gives us back part of it to maintain our lines. And that's where we're paying the debt out of is those fees. And so the only thing that's in there is the charges for fees and the debt payment for the following year. On page 5 is the EMS vehicle bond retirement. We still have, even though it's on now, we still have to include it because it has the 2 previous years of information on it. But that was paid off in 2020. And subsequently sold in 2021.
Paid off and got rid of it.
Just like any vehicle you buy right now.
Exactly.
Okay, our other funds, these are funds that are for a specific purpose. They could be grant funds or they could be restricted by state law for these purposes. So these street maintenance fund and state highway fund are funded by gas taxes. We get a portion of that. The bulk of which goes to our street maintenance fund. For 2021, we have the engineering for the Maplewood Cleveland Avenue intersection. With the anticipation of that project being completed in 2022. And then there is a little bit when the roads were all paved in 2010, I think. We're still paying a little bit of debt on that for the next 5 or so years. So that's the 20,000, that's the retirement. The state highway fund, is the little 10th mile of 161 that's in the village limits. We don't actually pay to maintain it because Columbus is on either side of it, so ODOT handles most of it, and we don't, they plow that one section. So by state law, we are required to put some of our gas tax money into there, but we have never spent it. So it just continues to accumulate until we figure out how either we can access the money or how the county ends up getting the money, because they kind of want a piece of it too since they're maintaining it. So since they said they wanted it, we kind of dropped it and haven't done anything with it since then. DUI education fund, anytime that someone gets a DUI within the village, there's a fee that comes into the village as part of their fine that we have to pay and use for alcohol education. We usually don't have very many expenses out of this because we don't have very much money into it, thankfully. So as it accumulates, then at some point, if we have activities that could be used for that, we pay for them out of there, but we typically don't very much. Law enforcement trust fund, similarly, we may get a fee or a fine into there. We rarely do. You can see it has a very small fund balance. We have not received any money in the last 2 years for that. So we always estimate about $100. We rarely ever get it. The permissive MBL with the county engineer, that's the money the county holds for us, that's the money that can only be spent on River Lake Road because the county has designated it as a major artery in the county. But they maintain the funding. We would have to apply to them with our plans to use it. They would have to okay it before we could spend it. But we physically do not have that money in the bank here, it's with the county. The permissive fee. Yes,
So that money can be used to do repairs on Minerva Lake Road?
only Minerva Lake,
Okay.
yes. And I'm not positive if, because I think there's some curb and gutter work that we had talked about on Minerva Lake. I may not be remembering that correctly. That we wanted to talk to them about what they're going to do.
To use it for that? Okay.
Yeah. The permissive MBL at $5, that's anytime you renew your license plates, you pay the $5 fee. And we get anytime a village resident renews their license. So, or their license plates. So we get about $4,000 out of that. That also is Minerva Lake, I believe, only. So those two combined could be enough to do the repair work that needs done. Mayor's Court Computer Fund, there's an A and a B, and they're only subsequently called that because it's the section of the ORC that allows for them. There's a fine anytime someone gets a speeding ticket or court costs that go into these two funds to maintain the online docketing. The Mayor's Court computer gets replaced out every few years out of here. Those fees are usually pretty consistent around the $2,000 mark for the one, and we usually do about $600 to $1,000 for the other. The Mary Yost Plant Fund is the bequest from Mary Yost from several years ago that can only be spent on the plants. So that money is still here for when council determines what purpose they want to use it for. The Veterans Memorial Fund is the one for the Veterans Memorial right up here. We do periodically advertise if anybody wants to purchase a memorial brick. It would be paid out of here, any maintenance would be paid out of here. Right now that balance is pretty small, but we just had put it in, so that's why. And then our big ones, our stormwater maintenance fund. Currently does not have a funding source. We have been working with our engineer and we're working with legal now to work out whether or not we can reallocate some water utility fees into stormwater. Because I'm pretty sure everybody in this room knows that stormwater is a pretty big issue where the water lines are not so much right now. And we were able, last year we did do a transfer. We were authorized by the tax commissioner to do a transfer of our excess water and sewer funds into the stormwater fund, and that's what's funding some of the projects that we have been doing already. So this tax budget assumes that we are able to legally reallocate that money going forward. If not, then we'll have to we gotta figure something out. The water line maintenance fund is the surcharge from everyone's quarterly utility bill. And it pays for the debt and pays for the water lines themselves. Columbus collects the money for us, Columbus installs the taps, but we are the ones that maintain the lines. Water lines, and they're relatively young in infrastructure speak, so they don't have a lot of maintenance at this point, which is great. So we expect that fund balance to last for quite a while. The sewer maintenance fund, the revenue has dropped because that was primarily funded by the MI subdivision and tap fees from that. We have been able to complete a couple of sewer projects out of that fund, so that's been really good. And this also assumes that we are able to reallocate some of that funding into the stormwater. These next couple funds are funds that the EMS vehicle replacement, that's the one that we're going to transfer over into the general fund. And the parkland fund is the $500 per home, new home that's built in the village. So it's primarily the MI funding, and we do have plans to spend that money on the park space related to MI, those areas, those green spaces. And then our facilities fund is the fund that was created to explore upgrading and modifying a community building. And that is what we are working towards right now. So we are planning to spend that on architect fees, and this was done before we moved the money, and before we went into the architect contract. So that's why it's a little lower than what actually is happening right now. So any questions on this ones? And the last page is a schedule of our outstanding debt. We have no general obligation debt at this point, which means money will be repaid from our property taxes, income taxes, general sources. Everything we have is through OPWC. So we have the 2 water line replacements, the Minerva Lake Road reconstruction from 2005, and then the 3 different street paving projects. And then the 2019 sanitary sewer repair, that's the one we did 2 years ago. The 2020 sanitary sewer repair, we do not have a completed amortization schedule yet for, but we do have that debt outstanding also, and those are both 0% interest rates. So it is not on here because it's not been finalized yet. So do we have any questions on the outstanding debt? That is the summary of the tax budget. And if there's no other questions, then council will be voting on this tonight for us to submit to the county as required. We have to submit it to them by July 15th. So.
I have a quick question.
On page 2 in the general fund, under the state share taxes, why do we see property tax allocation decreasing?
Last year we had a 4.0 mill levy and a 1.9 mill levy. Council elected to let the 1.9 mill levy expire. And since it expired, the 10% homestead rollback reduction, we're not collecting that anymore. That's where that would end up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I'm, pleased to announce that there actually was a tax decrease here
Right.
in the village of
Yeah, I
Minerva.
remember, at the time, we were all quite proud of that.
We all are, but I don't think anybody has any idea. Because we got all the Westerville taxes added back in. So we lowered ours and then they still went up because, well worth it, well worth it.
We did our best.
So thanks for asking that question.
Sure. Not planned.
Well, we appreciate it, so. Okay.
Is that it? Is that everything from you?
Everything for me?
All right, anybody have any additional questions, comments, or concerns? Going once, going twice?
Not to single anyone out.
Yeah. Then, at this time, I will call this, public hearing to a close and, move to it, do we need to move to adjourn?
Why not?
Sure, I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we are adjourned. We'll see you all in 6 minutes.